This is part 2 for volume 8, chapter 10. What I'm going to be doing, like I said, this is 4-part because there's certain parts of this particular chapter in volume 8 that it's like I can't really do one video on it. So for me, it'll be best to do like somewhat shorter videos, but break it down per certain aspects. So this is going to be Weiss. Now, like I said before, I did mention in the video log that it's not going to be in any particular order. But I did say that it was going to be 4 parts. Now, so the whole thing with Weiss here. Now, we do know that in chapter 10 is that Ironwood assumed Weiss ordered those planes. Again, there is a minor detail, and I put that minor in quotation marks, is that it was actually Whitley who ordered the planes because Weiss is no longer the heiress. But remember that extended video log about Bumblebee? Now, Weiss might be becoming a reason why Bumblebee becomes one-sided. Now, you're kind of thinking, does she have feelings for Yang or Blake? Maybe, maybe not. But you guys may not be able to look at the poster behind me, but that is the Volume 6 poster art. Now, we do know that for Volume 6, which repeats in Volume 8, is that Weiss and Blake are actually looking at each other. It's just like, we don't know exactly how they're looking at each other, but we do know it's there. That is probably going to be one of the reasons why Bumblebee becomes a bit one-sided, meaning that one's not going to reciprocate the other's feelings. And I am paraphrasing the discussion between Nora and Ren in Volume 7. So I was like, that could be one of those things. Or is it another reason why the Weiss may become a factor? Now, for this particular part of Chapter 10, kind of gives us a bit of a hint. It's in the form of the hug that Yang gave to the rest of her team. Now, you notice how Yang hugged RWBY and Blake. Now, if you notice the hug between Yang and Weiss, it may confirm an angsty freezer burn. Now, those who ship Weiss and Yang, which I will say this right now, just to inform everybody, anybody who ships, who has been shipping freezer burn, has been labeled a certain type of foe by the super toxic Bumblebee shippers, which has been on Tumblr. For the record with Tumblr, I actually deleted Tumblr altogether as of, I want to say yesterday, but it's something I've been wanting to do because I'm almost never on that website at all anymore. It's just a waste of space in my phone. So it's one of those things that I am no longer on Tumblr at any capacity. So I will not be going into anything related to Tumblr as of this point. But the thing is with freezer burn, it's like, it might be setting the stage for a very angsty freezer burn because they don't really see each other that way. But it also means perhaps a one-sided Bumblebee as well as an angsty Team RWBY altogether. Now, the hug between Weiss and Yang in Volume 8 is leagues different than the Volume 5 hug. And you think it's just like, if you think about Weiss, how she hugged Yang in Volume 5, but Yang didn't reciprocate the same type of hug. And it's kind of sad, for freezer burn shippers, but it also makes a concerning case in the eyes of some to the team as a whole. Meaning that if Yang and Weiss don't really see eye to eye, it may hurt the team on an overall scale. And you're kind of thinking, what? How? Now, I paid pretty close attention to the writing, the execution of the sorts, and it's like the novel, which is evolving around Team Coffee. I know it's the first novel because there were a decent amount of flashbacks involving Team RWBY. Now, one of the flashbacks in the first novel had Yang, thinking Weiss being an elitist. Yang is known to assuming things before learning the truth, and the truth may be as far from it in Yang's eyes. Because you think about when Yang mentioned thinking that Weiss being an elitist in the novel, before finding out in Volume 5 that Weiss didn't have it as good as she thought she did. There were some other types of issues. And, Yang was like, sorry, I shouldn't have assumed all that stuff. It's like, and the thing is with Yang, she has a habit of assuming things, which I wouldn't be surprised if it rubbed off on Ironwood. But the whole thing with Yang and Weiss, that hug at the end of chapter 10, like I said, the reason why it might set the stage for an angsty Freezerburn and an angsty Team RWBY is because of the aftermath of the Atlas arc, which is probably going to be Volume 8, like the end of Volume 8, as well as the end of Volume 9, where Weiss could very well stay behind an Atlas, to help rebuild both Mantle and Atlas as a whole. Which means if she stays behind, it's like, you're not going to have a Team RWBY anymore. And there may be some protests, saying, Weiss, we thought you were family and all this stuff. It's like, for me, and I kind of draw out what I'm about to say on personal experience, but it's like, for family, doesn't always live that close by to each other. There are people who have family in a different country, or in a different state, or different section of the United States, whatever. And they're still family. They don't have to be like this all the time. And the fact, with Weiss, I won't be surprised if she stays behind Alice just to rebuild. And now, we don't know if the rebuilding is like, if the rebuilding, takes to the end of the series where she comes back to join the team one last time. But, the whole thing with their hug is just like, Yang and Weiss, we still know they're not that close. And unfortunately, there might be one of those things where it could be enough to where it's like, we see an angsty Freezerburn, an angsty Monochrome, angsty White Rose, and an angsty Team RWBY because Weiss chose to stay behind to help out. And and that's where we could see the one side of Bumblebee. It's like, RWBY being a catalyst, Weiss being a reason. Now, like I said, and I should have said this, for any opinion in all these videos are going to be my opinion and my opinion only. The usual disclaimer. But here's the thing, like I said, the whole thing with Weiss is like she becomes a reason. It's like, the whole thing with the aftermath of the Atlas arc, which is the end of Volume 8, and then the Volume 9 where it's like people try to get to Vacchio. I personally do feel that Weiss is going to be staying behind an Atlas. Now, if that does become the case, we get to see 3 potential ships becoming very one-sided because Weiss chose to stay behind and to help out being more local. Now, with RWBY being a catalyst, RWBY's not going to take that too well. And it's just like, RWBY and Weiss, they're close, they have a sisterly relationship. It's clear as day as far as some eyes can see. Now, with Blake and Weiss, as well as Yang and Weiss, it's like, I think some of their behaviors towards Weiss is going to be called out. Because, Weiss, she has her own fair share of flaws. But for Blake and Yang, it's like, still have their reservations about her to this day. In the eyes of some, it's like, it's not going to be perceived well. But it depends on the individual interpretation. But to do a bit of a recap here, I don't think that the thing with Yang and Weiss, those two need to have a big talk. Now, and I don't think Volume 5, Chapter 8 was enough. I think they need to sit down and have some other issues resolved. Because after that, we do know that the end of Volume 6, it's like, where Weiss made that comment, I'm sorry you went through that nightmare. It's just like, we know that, we couldn't tell the tone of Weiss saying it. We couldn't tell if she was half-assing it, or if she was just that, holy crap. It's like, she really couldn't tell. You really couldn't tell with, Weiss's tone. But some people, part of me thinks that she just half-assed it. There's a part of me who thinks that she half-assed that apology. It didn't sound sincere, and then the whole thing with Yang is that hug, it didn't feel sincere. Now, with Blake, it's just like, I think Blake's going to be forced to make a choice in the vacuum arc if we get there. But again, the whole thing with Weiss, part of me does feel she's going to be staying behind in Atlas on her own accord to help rebuild Atlas and Mantle. And that's why I do feel it's going to be kind of one-sided on Bumblebee, because, like, that's going to be one of those reasons. It's because Weiss chose to stay behind in Atlas if she does that. And Ruby's not going to take it too well. Blake's going to be like, they're going to be pissed off. She's going to be pissed off at Weiss. Yang, probably not so much. And I do feel that Yang and Weiss has to have a really good heart-to-heart, because the hug kind of does cement, in my eyes, one-sided Frieza burn in that regard, as well as one-sided a few other things, and it's an angsty Team RWBY, because apparently some of the assumptions that Yang has especially made about Weiss, Blake's idea around, I know it's like early mid volume 6, it's like that's going to become like, there you go, there goes your proof. You guys never liked Weiss from the beginning, yet you're on the same team with her. So I think Weiss is going to have a really good heart-to-heart with Yang, possibly with Blake as well. It's like, and until that happens, I see Weiss leaving the team. And this is probably not going to sit well with RWBY, because some of the other hints, from Volume 7, Weiss is doing her own thing altogether. Blake and Yang, whatever. And it's like, it's going to put a lot of doubt into RWBY. And we see that, the whole thing when they come out of that mission, it's like, they wanted to, get some rest or whatever. Just like, yeah. And then the whole thing before that, a party for Robin, I think that's going to be another nail in the coffin, sadly. But this is part 2. I'm done with Wolvie here, signing off. I will catch you all on the flip side.